See that Paula has arrived. Would you like to come forward or? Thank you.
My apologies for lateness.
That's all right.
Yeah, Adrian's going to go first. I have no idea what he's going to say.
That's all right. Thank you, councillors and fellow elected members and staff. Tuakea ki te mehi atu, kia koutou e hui mai nei tēnei ahi no reira tērā no tātou katoa. I just want to acknowledge a couple of things. First of all, the authenticity of this particular round of submissions as opposed to previous processes that have happened. And also, we're just very much aware that we are the smallest of all the rated wards, and ours are particularly like the like Pam's one, are quite peninsula centric. So I'll just hand it over to our Chair.
Right, thank you. And first, a little administrative matter. We've had a late submission from the Cass Bay Reserves Management Committee, which was only finalised in the last week or so, and they've missed the deadline for the long-term plan. And I'm wanting to ask whether you would consider accepting a late submission from them.
Absolutely.
So can I bring it
Yep,
up?
no, that's fine. So they're called the Cass Bay.
Cass Bay Reserve Management Committee.
Right.
And they're just wanting a wee bit of funding to be able to finish it up.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
It's probably an operational matter, okay?
A tiny scud,
Yes.
tiny little.
So thank you for doing that. I'm not going to go on, but there's just three things I want to highlight. One is the Lyttelton wastewater project, which is a capital project, 890. That would be our top priority, and we have that goes ahead as planned, and we've attached to our submission a timeline which we hope will explain all the reasons why it kind of needs to happen.
That was incredibly helpful, thank you.
Yep.
Really helpful.
Okay, I'm pretty it seems like that's going to happen, but I just need to make sure that.
No, you do, because we've said that we're going through every single capital
that's right.
project. So,
and the only other two things I want to talk about are the Naval Point area, which has been an eyesore and an embarrassment for our community, and I think for the city as a whole, for a long time since that marina was destroyed.
Yep.
And we welcome project, the capital project 357, the Lyttelton Marina Environs Development. This is fantastic, and it's incorporated. Also, it's referred to in the draft Lyttelton Port Recovery Plan. It's part of that whole thing. But we're a bit worried that while there's funding for the development plan, there doesn't appear to be, from our reading, any funding to actually implement the development plan. And we're very uneasy about that. We don't want development plans being prepared, and there's a good process going on with lots of involvement with the community groups, expectations raised, and then nothing happens again for another 10 years. That would be awful. And there's a couple of other Naval Point projects which we've asked for some explanation about how they fit in with that development plan project. One of the ones that the Community Board has championed is Project 17918, which is currently unfunded, which seeks to make some modifications on the seaward side to improve the safety of particularly people with small boats. When the weather turns bad at Naval Point. And it would be our view that that project should probably be considered along with the development plan, not as a separate item. And there's a couple of other Naval Point things that would be good. We just would like some confidence that there's an integrated planning process going on, not things being left out. And the final thing is there's a number of...
Did you make a submission on the Lyttelton recovery plan as well?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I thought you would have, but I'm just assuming that you did.
Yes,
but
we did.
I thought I'd better ask.
And then, so the thing that I wanted is relevant there is Norwich Quay. We've got a number of unfunded projects that address this thing that Lyttelton community has been asking for years, and that is to get that heavy traffic off what is our original main street. We're optimistic that that may even happen yet as a result of that recovery plan process. So we're very pleased to see those projects, although unfunded at the moment, just sitting there, maybe ready to pop up if ever that becomes possible. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Happy to take some questions.
Yep. Raf, is it? Yep.
Thanks, guys, for coming in. Sounds like you need a bit of money to invest in some of these projects. What confuses me, though, is around, say, the port and assets, is that there's a reluctance to raise the capital that we actually need to invest in things. So you can't have it both ways. And I'm just interested to know how you think we're going to get the capital that you need to make the investments that you want to happen in your community.
We talked about this at the community board when we had our submissions committee. There was general support for not selling assets, but we couldn't kind of get agreement about what the alternative was. There was a range of views.
Because also there's something else that worries me. It says, if the port company is sold, it will put future revenue from the company into private hands. Now, I see this again and again and again, and what people don't realise is the capital that you get from that sale is the present value of those future cash flows. So there's this idea that when you sell something, you give something up. You're not, you're actually getting the cash today. The value of that cash is worked out on the present value of those future dividends over the next 20, 30 years. But what you're getting is the cash today that you can use to invest. You're not going to get those dividends today. You're going to get those dividends over the next 30 years. So I just get a bit concerned when I see sentences like that, which are not accurate, and it may lead people to believe that that's actually the truth, which it isn't. So the thing is, there's a bunch of trade-offs here. So, for example, you want a cruise terminal, which I think is a great idea. We need capital for that. If you want to invest in some of your other stuff, you need capital, but we need the capital today. That's the problem. And we're capital constrained because there are so many things that people want to do today as opposed to over the next 30 years. So I just thought I'd raise that. And also further ask a question about the rates increase. When you said the board would support a small additional increase in rates as an alternative to asset sales, so is that an increase on top of what's being proposed?
Yes.
So you're saying
there was some support for that.
So over 8.75%?
Yes.
Okay. And that was support from the community at large or the community board? I've yet to meet anyone in the community who wants higher rates.
There were 3 members at our submissions committee, and that was the agreement with those 3 members.
Okay.
And they would be making that recommendation to council on the strength of their knowledge of what they are hearing in the community. Okay. But I'd just like to respond to the purpose of this, the sentence that you've picked out there about the purpose of holding strategic is the revenue stream. That links back to the concern that was expressed at our community board about the impact on people on fixed incomes of not having the cushion that the assets provide for the future to keep the rates down.
It doesn't provide, that's the whole point, it doesn't provide a cushion. It's simply a trade-off of whether you have the capital today or you have a cash flow in the future. Well, it's exactly the same number, and in fact you could argue that if we're only receiving, say, a 3% dividend return now and paying 5.5% in debt, that actually today we're better off in terms of liquidating that.
I mean, I think this is a question that I think all of the community boards are going to have to take on board, and the fact that you've allowed time for questions rather than using the time to present doesn't mean you have to answer that question. Yeah, I think it's a point that's, that could be made to all of the community boards. And there's more ways to skin a cat than just a pure sell down. And I don't think anyone supports the wholesale sale of council assets, which is the point that your community board made. And I think that's a genuinely held view, and it's one that's pretty universally held. I don't think anyone wants to see a fire sale or the wholesale sell down of our asset base.
I think people are frightened of that happening.
They are, yeah, and I can understand why when it's presented in a particular way. But you don't have to answer that question here and now. It's an important.
Rafe maybe needs to take on board is that people don't understand what he's saying and they fear. So we are trying to reflect that.
I know, and I mean, it'd be really interesting because this is the debate that we need to have, and it is the debate that we've been kind of encouraging people to have ever since last year when we started an engagement which said that there are different levers you can pull,
Yes.
and not one of them's going to do it on its own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm raising this point, because it worries me that people have the wrong perception of basically how this stuff works. I mean, I did a public talk on the assets 3 or 4 weeks ago, and actually explained in
Right, Councillor Johansson was ruled out for this very matter. I have a point of order. Several of us.
Yeah, I'm explaining why I'm asking this question, because it's quite important, that's all. So the community just needs to understand.
But rather than focus on the one community board, it is an issue that we do need to raise.
And they are wider issues, and that's why we're not responding to say, actually, it's a fear from the fourth Labour government amongst anything, and other sales of assets, and there's still the residue of that within communities like Lyttelton, who are profoundly affected.
Yeah, and that's understandable.
Yeah.
So, and you know, you do represent a particular area, and there is a major asset there, but there is also major investment required. So I guess that's why it's come up in your context. But I kind of want to focus on some of the other things that you've got in your submission, you know, before we run out of time, rather than then focus on that. And I'm just gonna sort of kind of note this Lyttelton Marina Environs development, because I know that when I first went out and did a port company visit around that whole area, I agree it's a disgrace that the way that it's been left. And in the recovery of the port, if there is a capacity to actually invest in that as a community facility, I think that would be an absolute win-win, and I'm sure that the port company would want to see it that way as well. So, but you're raising a concern, which is, have we put anything on budget for it? And I suspect the answer to your question is, no, we haven't. And so the question is going to be, where are we going to find the support for that, and at what point in the planning process do we do that?
There's also an issue from the recovery plan, and then that if the choice of cruise site is the Naval Point one, that has a big impact on how that development can go ahead. It's a site that's already tightly constrained, and that would add additional constraints.
Has the community formed a view on that in terms of the cruise ship location?
I'm not aware of a specific one coming up yet. Yep.
So it would be mixed views at this stage?
All the community groups that are involved in this Naval Point development plan process, I think they probably realise that there would be the site's already constrained by the rockfall risk and the contaminated land. There's about 6 or 7 community organisations operating out of there, and it's already really tight just to get their existing activities on there, reorganised sensibly. And if some of that land gets taken for the cruise berth, that makes it even tighter. So without having talked to them specifically about this, I think there's a concern. I know from one organisation that there is anyway.
Yeah, okay. Ellie?
It might be helpful on that note to communicate what came out of the last meeting that we had. We've got a working group looking at the cruise, and in fact Andrew was there as well. And the phrase that was used coming out of that when we looked at the Dampier Bay location was, we're all on the same page then. So it was quite clear from that meeting that the community and the port and the people at that meeting all said that the cruise terminal they were looking at Dampier Bay, we're all on the same page.
There is no cruise
Naval
terminal
Point,
at
not Dampier Bay.
Pardon?
So that's Naval Point for the cruise. Dampier Bay is the ferry terminal. So Naval Point was the cruise area. Dampier Bay is the inner harbour location for the ferry.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's just, I mean, it's good because there's a process, there's a separate process going on, and what you're saying to us as the community board is in order to support that process, we need to put money on budget in order to ensure that we can actually deliver on it, you know, depending on the outcome. And the question will be the timing of that.
Yep.
So it may well be that it's best not to put it on budget in this round, bearing in mind that we've said very publicly that this is a base case proposition that we're putting out for consultation and what we're hearing submissions on. We know that we're going to have to start again on the 1st of July because we've got an obligation to continually update this document.
Yep.
It can't be seen as your stock standard 10-year LTP. It's not. And there are a number of issues that have come up when people have referenced the individual activity management plans, which have, sort of highlighted the fact that there hasn't been a strategic focus by the council on the different components that make up the costs that either go to activities or go to the capital program. So, I mean, if that means that after the recovery plan goes through its process, we have to review that, then that's exactly what we have to do.
Good.
Yep. All right. Okay. Right. We shall move on. Thank you very much, Paula. That's much appreciated, and Adrian as well.